Many civil engineering professionals dream of managing mega projects in their career. Well, in this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast, I'm going to talk to a civil engineer who does manage mega projects, and he's also a program manager, meaning that he manages programs of multiple projects that have to work together. And in this episode, he's going to talk about what's involved in managing these projects, some of the exciting projects he's worked on, and some of the things that he's learned through working on them. Really exciting stuff. Can't wait to share this one with you. Let's jump right in. All right, now I'm excited to welcome our guest onto the podcast for today, Milos Vasiljevic. Milos, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
All right, thanks, Anthony. I'm really excited to be on your podcast, and I'm really thrilled about our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it. You've worked on some really exciting projects, and I'm excited to dive into some of those with you. But before we go there, Milos, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about what you do at HDR on a daily basis?
Sure. So I am a program manager with HDR. What I do is I help owners, public owners in the infrastructure sector in the transportation industry to procure and then oversee design, construction, and maintenance of major infrastructure projects and help them manage their risks. That's my day-to-day job. I typically work in a co-located office on large projects, and I've had the opportunity to work on some of the most exciting projects within the country in the last 10 years that I could think of, such as the Mario Cuomo Bridge in New York, the replacement of the old Tappan Zee Bridge, as well as for the past few years, the chance that I had to work in my home state of Arizona on the new South Mountain Freeway project.
Yeah, it's exciting, and we're going to dive into some of those projects. But one of the things I want to ask you about, Milos, right up front here, because I think it's a question a lot of civil engineering professionals have, is what's the difference between project management and program management? Because, program management is something that a lot of people have been talking about more and more with infrastructure. Yeah. And I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
So the difference between project management and program management is, the most by the book definition is when you manage a project, you're managing one finite project that has its start and end, and it has a clear scope. Now, you can take that to the next level, which is managing programs, which is a group of projects with a common goal. So what you're doing is you end up having more complexity, and you have to also look at how do those projects interact with each other. You have a lot more coordination with stakeholders as well. And I really believe that the risk management and optimization goals do come into play a lot more than you would have on a standard project. Now, in addition to that, what we've included, right, wrong, or indifferent, within, at least in transportation, within our program management capability or scope is managing mega projects, which really, if you look at them, if you look at a mega project that is, over $1 billion dollars of construction, you have hundreds of regular projects within them, and you have things that are all related within this one project that can take 3-5 years to complete, that you are doing, and we look at that as the responsibility and of program management, really. Sure. Because it ends up being very common tasks that you would have.
No, that's great. That's very helpful explanation. And, again, just to kind of summarize that from what I'm hearing, just because I know a lot of our listeners are interested and always thinking about where they're headed in their career. So project management, you're managing a project, there's different parties, there's different components of that project, and you're kind of overseeing them and helping it to come to completion. Whereas program management, you have several projects that are tied together, and you're kind of managing how they interact, and you want the whole program to be successful, and
Yep.
you're looking at different projects. And if you have a project that's a mega project of $1 billion, let's say, that can really be viewed as a program because it has different projects within it.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll cover it at a later time. The project I previously mentioned, the South Mountain Freeway project, was originally envisioned as 9 projects. So you would have a program, and it was a program, with a common goal of completing the 202 loop in Phoenix. And at one point in time, it was all combined into one project, one mega project.
All right, well, let's talk about that now. So this South
Yeah,
Mountain Freeway project, take us through it. It was a roadway project with multiple components.
yeah. So it's a 22-mile long new freeway that's built in the Phoenix metropolitan area, connecting the. It is connecting the east and west valleys of the Phoenix metropolitan area, and it's been in the making. It's been in the plan since since the 80s, and it was envisioned as 9 separate projects. What Ada was able to do is actually take a look at it and say, okay, what if we combined these projects into one project? We can gain some efficiencies in that, in terms of reducing the number of procurements that you will have, and then let us use the P3 law, which is the public-private partnership law, in order to uh, shift some of the risks from the owner that the owner traditionally holds to the private entity, and take a look at who can manage each risk on the job in the best possible way. And through using the P3 law and delivering this project as a design, build, maintain project, Ada was able to cut about 3 years off of the project schedule and save about $100 or so million overall on
Wow,
this program.
that's
So
awesome. That's really awesome. So Arizona Department of Transportation, or ADOT, they
yeah,
would be kind of the client here. They were the
yeah,
public entity that you were dealing with, and they put together this project. It was going to be 9 projects. They consolidated a little bit for efficiency
yeah.
purposes, which is great. A couple questions there. First of all, you mentioned P3. For listeners not familiar with P3, what is P3?
So P3, it's a public-private partnership where a public agency like ADOT will work with a private developer together, where you can deliver infrastructure through, I mentioned before, design, build, maintain, uh, which was South Mountain. But you can also have a finance component, which is design, build, maintain, and finance, where a private entity or a concessionaire will bring in private money to build a facility.
Okay,
For
so no, that's great. That's helpful. Now let's talk a little bit. Let's dig in a little deeper there. And you mentioned
yeah,
risks, which I know sounds like a big part of a program manager's job is to help the client minimize or reduce their risks. And
yeah.
if our listeners are listening and thinking, well, what kind of risks are you talking about? Maybe to me, right off the bat, for me, I'm thinking, maybe maintenance could be a way, maybe financing. So talk to us about what some of the risks are that you try to help the client reduce.
Sure. So your typical, I mean, for all projects, when you look at it, you have your cost and schedule risks, and then you have a number of technical risks. But what an owner wants is to provide reliable and safe infrastructure to the public. When you look at it, and I'll give you a particular example of South Mountain. When you bring in a private entity, there is a worry: are they going to give us the facility that we're looking for? So one of the things to look at, that went ahead and said, okay, well, let us go, and this is for the first time that they've ever done this. Let us go ahead and incentivize the developer to build the best infrastructure possible, and let's do that by shifting the maintenance, so lifecycle maintenance, and the maintenance responsibilities to the developer for the next 30 years. So, with that, we're going to incentivize them to build the best facility possible, because you know what? They're on the hook to maintain it, and they want to do it in the most efficient way for the next 30 years. So that's a good example of how you can shift the risk of maintenance costs from the owner to the private entity and incentivize them in such a way to do the best job possible during the design and construction.
That's great. No, that makes it really clear, and I can see how, that sounds like an exciting job to me. Managing the program and getting involved with those types of things. And I'm glad that you're talking about that, because I think sometimes, civil engineering professionals are focused on a lot of the details, thinking about project management, and they forget that there's other, you can go big picture in terms of program management and risks and benefits to a client. And if you're interested in that kind of and those kind of things at work, you can get involved with that as well. So let's flip over now to the Mario M. Cuomo Bridge, which I'm very familiar with. I drove over it a lot, being that I worked in the Rockland County and Westchester County areas in New York here. Talk to us a little bit about that project. That was a big time project. What did that entail? It was very high profile across the country.
Sure. So, Mario Cuomo Bridge is the new 3-mile long, 3.1 mile long cable stayed bridge that connects, like you mentioned, Westchester and Rockland counties. And it was built to replace the old aging Tappan Zee Bridge that was built back in the 50s. I'll tell you, this is when I was applying to colleges, I remember, you know how you like write an essay about, hey, what do you want to do as a civil engineer? So I remember writing, I would love to build the bridges, to connect the infrastructure and connect the people. And the fact that I got a chance to, I don't know how many ever years later to work on a bridge like that, it was a dream come true for me. And I was, I helped out with the proposal. I knew some folks from the New York offices, when we won the project, we were the lead design firm as HDR. They asked, hey, would you be willing to move to New York and help with the design of the bridge? And I talked to my wife, and we had our 6-month-old son at the time, and we just said, well, let's just do it, and let's just go for it. And we moved to New York, and I'll tell you, the energy and the excitement of everyone that was there working on that project was just amazing, like electric. And everyone is working towards something that you look at it and it's like bigger than yourself. It's going to be there for 100 years. It was a truly remarkable experience in my life. And I was very, very, very humbled and excited to work on this project. My role was to come up with a solution to, down the line, build a commuter rail bridge in between the two highway bridges, and to provide a solution so that the existing bridge that's built today can be modified in the future to carry a commuter rail bridge in between the two structures. And it was a very exciting and big challenge for me, and it was a true growing experience, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I mean, you look at it, I feel it like it was, now it's like 7 years ago that that we were there, and it still feels like yesterday.
Yeah, no, that's great. And for those of you not familiar with the New York, New Jersey area, that bridge does handle a lot of daily traffic of commuters that go into New York City for work every day. So you can imagine the type of traffic and the volume that it does, which is one of the reasons that for years it's been talked about, replacing it. And finally, of course, that happened. And getting back to that, your component there on the project, looking at the commuter rail,
Yeah.
Milos, talk to us about that. What are some of the things that you needed to look at in investigating that?
Sure. So one of the things, and that was a big challenge. This is something that the New York State Thruway Authority said, we want this bridge to be built so that we want it to be a resilient structure. We want your design and construction solution to be able to accommodate future transit needs. And when you think of that, a lot of structures, you build them, and then you have to make significant modifications down the line. Just like the existing bridge, it was built for, when the old Tappan Zee Bridge was built in the 50s, it carried 14,000 vehicles or so. At the time that it was functionally obsolete, it was to carry 100 and something thousand vehicles, and you just had to replace it. So the Thruway Authority said, well, we want you to design and build this new bridge so that you would be able to add, one more bridge in, and in between the existing structures, and to be able to carry the rail. Now, with that, this is something that may be built in the next 30 years or something. So who knows when, but we needed to build the existing structure to be efficient, to be within the cost, but still be able to sustain the future loading. So we built the foundations of the existing bridge to be able to carry one more bridge on it down the line, whenever that is, but still do it in a way that is cost effective for today's public, because you don't want to build, or you can't even win a job where the new bridge is $4 billion, and if you were going to say, well, it'll be an extra $1 billion to do this, it just doesn't work.
Right, especially since you're not realizing those benefits today.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not worth it to build it today. So that was a very interesting challenge to do, and I really enjoyed working on it, and the amount of work that went into it is I don't know. Like, we had a team here. I'll tell you, we had a team working on this from Copenhagen, from Vancouver, from across the U.S., and just the amount of folks working on this job was just amazing, staggering. We had, I think, at one point in time, over 700 designers across the world working on this one structure.
Wow. I mean, it just goes to show you that, the kinds of projects that you can work on in this field and the number of people you interact with, which is why, we talk a lot about, of course, the importance of being able to work with people effectively and your people skills and things of that nature. But that being said, it sounds like in the work that you do, and I think just in general in the world of civil engineering in today, we need to be really creative and we need to be innovative. And sometimes still, when you hear the words kind of project management and innovation, people aren't, smiling all that much. They're not really sure if the two go together. Talk a little bit about the importance of innovation in project management and program management, and how, we can continue to kind of develop that.
All right. So, when you look at, let me see it this way. When you look at creativity and innovation, they're two separate processes. Creativity will come from, idea generation, and when you look at innovation, innovation is actually the process of implementing creativity, and when you look at project management, it's a implementation of projects. So in order to foster innovation within your project teams, really you have to create an environment of innovation. You have to create an environment of, call it intellectual bravery. It's a and if you want so for your teams to have intellectual bravery, there's a few things you have to do as a project manager, but really as a leader within your team. You have to encourage within your team a willingness to disagree, to dissent, to challenge, and to challenge the status quo. And the only way you can do that is by encouraging and creating a safe environment for people to take the risks, to take the risk of being embarrassed, of being reprimanded, to be marginalized, to be punished. You need to create an environment where people feel free that, hey, I can take these risks. People will listen to me, and I think it's a challenge to do, but I'll give you an example. And I really look back to one of the clients that I had, and he was a client but also a mentor, and he did a lot of stuff to really, he would always come in and say, well, why would I do that? He would ask, like, he would tell me, well, challenge me. This is what I do, but I want you to challenge me. Why should I do it different? Tell me what are the things, like, what am I doing wrong? And then he really, and I hope I can do that, or that I can emulate that, but he showed his own vulnerability to the people. He would, for example, I had a Zoom meeting recently, and he said, oh, okay, let me show you, I've been playing a guitar. And it starts the meeting with playing a guitar for a few minutes, and say, here it is. And it just creates an environment where you feel free to speak up your mind.
Sure.
And that's really what I always thought. Hey, that's a way you're able to channel and foster innovation within your teams.
Sure. People need to feel comfortable and feel that they could throw some ideas on the table. And even if they're a little bit crazy, they'll still be heard and they'll still be discussed. And it will, maybe spur on some new innovative or creative ideas that can potentially be benefited through innovation. So back to that innovation for a second. I guess this client is kind of tied into this question too, is how can the owner support that on a project?
So you need to, for projects to be successful and programs to be successful, especially on mega projects, you do need innovative and new ideas. Now, what an owner does, the very first step is to decide to do and deliver a mega project. And innovation is sparked by creating uncomfortable environments. And I mean, that's what it is. You don't think, I don't know if you've ever been to any of like change trainings, change management trainings, but one of the things they tell you is like, oh, take your watch and put it on the other hand that you're not used to wearing, and let's do that for the rest of it. Well, a mega project is really taking your watch from the hand you're wearing out to the other hand. We've never done it before. So you're uncomfortable. Well, an organization, an agency, and I'll for example, ADA that I work for is on the Department of Transportation. Say at one point in time, hey, we're going to be uncomfortable, and they decide, okay, we'll deliver, we'll deliver this, South Mountain Freeway as a one large $1.7 billion project, and we'll do it as a P3, which we have never done before. So they've created an environment of, an uncomfortable environment for themselves. That's the first thing. Then you need to look at, well, how can I take that and implement it? Well, the way you do it, I mean, is, government agencies, you write procurement documents. You release an RFP to the street, and what you do is you say, now, well, let's try something a little different. We'll write performance specifications. We'll do a performance contract rather than a prescriptive contract. So you say, well, there are things that a developer can suggest to us to do, and we'll implement what they call ATCs into the project. Now, this gets very technical, but let me take a step back from that. What you do as an owner to encourage innovation is to have a collaborative environment that fosters communication between all parties. The sooner you can do that, the better it is for the job. So when you start writing the procurement documents, you can have, you can enable contractors or developers to come in and suggest ideas. It's called the alternative technical concept, that ATC process, but that's what you're doing. You're bringing the contractor in to bring in their ideas, how you could do things differently. You let them challenge you. And then you look back and say, well, actually, maybe we could do this or that a little different. And then you incorporate uh, those things into the contract so that by the time you're done with procurement and you're going into design and construction, you already have a team. You already have your owner team, your designer and contractor all working together. And you already had some of that, storming, norming, forming built in. And that's I believe that's one of the key components. That is the key component in being successful and foster innovation as an owner, creating a collaborative environment as soon as possible.
That's great. No, that is great. And I think that's really important, especially in the world we live in today,
Yeah.
where we need to be super creative and really innovative. And, to that end, in your opinion, what would you say have been some of the impacts that the pandemic has had on the ability to implement innovation on these major infrastructure projects?
Sure. So one of the things you look at, it's affected all of us. Uh, I believe that within, on major projects, you have large teams. And we've been able to shift pretty seamlessly with technology, to working remote. And we're talking over Zoom now. And we've used, the same tools to create and emulate that collaborative environment. What it's helped is uh, to implement more technology to facilitate better communication, and to get people uncomfortable, to start thinking, hey, what could I do better to do to continue doing my job? And one of them is use of technology. We've implemented virtual public meetings uh, to keep things going. If you go into a public meeting, you go to like a high school or something to provide feedback about a project. Well, we can do that virtually, and you can reach more people that way as well. In addition to the standard way of doing public meetings, but in addition, what we do now is react to it. What we do now to the we react to the pandemic and we implement tools, technology, new ways of doing things to collaborate. We use a tool called Mural, to emulate a virtual whiteboard where everybody can come in and type in things at the same time, and it's a great tool. It emulates us sitting in a conference room and working together. But additional things that we've done is focus or reinvigorate yourself to focus on uh, highlighting the wins and successes. People are a little down. There's a lot of anxiety in general. So you think, and it really helps teams. You focus on, hey, what are the successes that we can have? Well, on infrastructure projects, you can do a lot more work when there's nobody driving. So during the lockdown, there's no cars on the roads. Well, all of a sudden you can have longer work hours, longer closures, traffic closure. You can have a lot more work done, and you can actually build infrastructure quicker when there's nobody there. And that's one of the effects of the pandemic. But I'll tell you what I'm most excited about is, as we go back to call it the new normal, whatever it ends up being, as we go back to standard work, people have been challenging themselves and have been working in a different environment. How I told you, you take a watch from one hand to another. Well, we've been working with our watches on the off hand for 9 months. It's become the new normal. And now it's going to be the time to go and take those watches and put them back on the hand that we're used to. But now it's not going to feel comfortable on this hand either. and I really look forward for our transition from reacting to the pandemic to now taking everything we've learned and implementing in a world that no longer has a pandemic, but now can function in a different and a new way, in a better way. And things that come out of that are that I really look forward to is, I mentioned to you doing virtual public meetings. Well, that highlights the fact that you really need access to broadband, facilities and services across the state. It highlights these initiatives that are there. We have broadband projects, that are being built together with the infrastructure, but now that puts it into a perspective where you say, hey, I really need people to have access to infrastructure, to better internet, to broadband across the state. We need to do that. That becomes fresh and very tangible in people's minds. And things
Sure.
like that are what sparks innovation, a different way of thinking as our society progresses. And I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, no, listen, it's great. And it's great to hear that even though this pandemic has been a very tough time for a lot of people, like you said, there's a lot of anxiety. I'm a believer that, there's opportunities kind of in every situation. And I think in this situation, we do need to look for opportunities. And you certainly laid out some of the opportunities there to become more innovative and to use tools that we're now learning about that we can continue to use moving forward on some of these very large infrastructure projects. So it's been really exciting kind of to hear you, Milos, go through some of these mega projects you've been working on, big programs, and hearing about some of the challenges and some of the work you do in terms of the risks and how you help the clients kind of minimize those risks. I think it's a really exciting profession in this discipline of civil engineering, which is such a big discipline. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back and we're going to put Milos on the civil engineering hot seat and ask him a couple of last career related questions. So stick with us. All right, I'm back with Milos Vasiljevic from HDR. He works on some big time projects and programs, and he's been really gracious to spend some time with us here and share some information about those projects. But now we're going to put him on the hot seat and we're going to ask him some career related questions. Milos, you ready for this?
Sure, why not?
All right. So first of all, are there any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning routine or a lunchtime routine or something that you do consistently on a daily basis that contributes to your success?
Sure. One thing that I do is every morning I write out a list of things that I plan to accomplish for that day. And a few years ago, I got into that routine and I found it extremely helpful. It gets my mind in a mood to think, hey, what are all the things that I need to do? And, I'll jot out a few that I know for sure that I can accomplish. And it really sets my day going. And at the end of the day, you always have that feeling of success as you cross off the few things. And even if you had a pretty stressful day or a bad day in general, you can say, well, but I got my stuff done. And that's something that I really relied on and helped me do my work and just as a simple routine that as a part of my day has improved my life.
Sure. And in terms of coming up with that list, is it just something that whether it's in from your emails, from your head, how do you come up with that list?
Yeah, exactly. Things from, just like you say, things from my emails, things, hey, I need to call this person. I need to make sure I send out these emails. I need to finish a financial report or update the risk register today. And it's just a good way of organizing yourself in the morning. And what I also found is a lot of times people will say, well, I got to do this, but it may take you a few days to do it, whatever the task is. And then if you look at something that will take you a few days to do and you say, well, yes, that'll take me a long time, but what can I do today? And you make that task even smaller.
Right.
Well, it gets you going and you can do that much for that day of that big task. And it's really helpful in having discrete little pieces that you can chew up. Smaller bites are easier
Build momentum. You start building up momentum. No,
Yeah.
that's great. That's awesome. All right. Next question. What's one book that you might recommend to our listeners or just a book that you may have found helpful for you in your professional or your personal development? Do you have a book that stands out for you?
Yeah, sure. The book I really like reading is called The Trusted Advisor. And it's a book that discusses trust and provides a I believe a very simple and common sense way to describe what are the components of trust and what it means. And I looked it up and I found it because I thought that especially as an engineering consultant that I am, or in the consulting industry, uh, people use trust and saying, "Oh, I'm a trusted advisor" as a buzzword, but they don't really think what does it really mean, and are they being perceived that way? Because most people will say, "Hey, I'm trustworthy," but you have to really look and say, is what I say, what I do, and how I act being truly perceived as trustworthy? And uh, it really frames your mind and helps you in building relationships. And relationships is what it all is about in our industry.
Yeah, for sure. And The Trusted Advisor by David Maister. David Maister is like a
Yeah,
leading authority
you read it too, you know it.
in management. Yeah, no, he's very well known. So I'm glad you shared that one with us for sure. All right, next question. So thinking back on some of your managers that you've had, Milos, as a professional in this industry, and not, I'm not asking you to name any names, but if you think of some of your favorite managers, what are some of the characteristics that they had that made them your favorite?
they I'll tell you, they were my biggest champions. They would say, uh, be who you are. They were able to truly be the champions for me, to encourage me to uh, pursue my passions, and to really be there. They would say, hey, I'm here to support you to be successful. That is my goal. My job as your manager is to serve you and to help you be the best person that you can be and the best engineer that you can be, but find your happy spot overall. And that's I'll tell you, those are the people that, I mean, I'm grateful for the rest of my life to. And some of the things here, I'll tell you, one more thing is they would really stand up on your behalf. I've had uh, I've had a number of challenging situations to say, and I know that, as everyone does in their career, there's times when you just feel like, man, I really need help, or I need somebody in my corner, and those people would be there, and that's something that uh, and they would be there by default. You wouldn't have to ask them. That would be like that's what I do. And really, that's something that you know I, I I can't describe how helpful that is for people's growth and people's careers, and just general
They supported you.
satisfaction.
They just
Yeah,
really supported you, and that made you feel good, and that helped you in your career, and that's great. And I hear that a lot from people. Managers that really support you and they're focused on your development
yeah.
are managers that people absolutely remember. All right, Milos, I've got one final question for you. We call it the civil engineering career elevator advice question. So if you got into an elevator with a civil engineer and you had about 30 to 40 seconds with him or her, and you had to give them a piece of career advice in that short period of time, what would you tell them?
All right. Well, never forget civil in civil engineering. And that this is a people industry, a relationship industry. And focus both on, especially as you start early, you're focused on your uh, technical advancement, but always remember your professional and relationship and people skills. With that, one piece of advice that worked for me, I don't know if it would work for others, but um, before 40, if you feel comfortable where you are, you're doing something wrong.
That's a great piece of advice. Yeah, for sure. If you're too comfortable, you probably need to take some more risks.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great.
that, and that worked for me.
Excellent. Well, listen, Once again, we're here with Milos Vasiljevic from HDR. Milos, thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy day to spend it with us here on the Civil Engineering Podcast. We really appreciate all of your thoughts and advice that you've shared.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for having me. This was really fun.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast on YouTube, produced by the Engineering Management Institute. We're always looking for new ways to help engineers become effective managers and leaders. You can view all of our content on our website at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for our weekly videos. Until next time, please continue to engineer your own success.